Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we continue speaking about word order in English, and in this last episode in the series of my lessons on word order, we'll be speaking about some untypical sentences that we have in English. And I invite you to start with declarative sentences that have a somewhat strange word order. There are some dishes over there. If we look at this sentence, we'll see that it doesn't follow the traditional subject-verb-object order. Some dishes are over there is a typical sentence where the subject, some dishes, takes the first place, are, the verb takes the second place, and over there is the adverbial modifier that stays at the end of the sentence. But what is the subject of there are some dishes over there? There are some languages that allow you to omit the subject, but English is not one of them. In English, you cannot say are some dishes. The verb are requires a subject. When we don't have a real subject, which seems to be the case with the sentence there are some dishes over there, we must use a dummy one. Actually, the main noun of the sentence is some dishes. These are the dishes that we are talking about, but they don't take the place of the traditional subject in a typical English sentence, right? This place is taken by there. There is called a dummy subject or a syntactic expletive. Syntactic expletives perform a syntactic role, but they don't contribute to meaning. That's why they are also called empty subjects, because there, at the beginning of the sentence, there are some dishes over there, gives us no information. There are only three meaningful components here: the subject, some dishes, are, and where, over there. Thus, there is an expletive adverb here. It doesn't answer the question where, but is just a placeholder for a subject. Over there is the adverbial modifier of place in the sentence. It answers the question where, in that place, at a distance. As we discussed our first lesson in this series, English is an analytical language. That means that it has a strict word order. This word order is subject, verb, object, and we must follow it. That means that every declarative sentence in English should have the subject and the verb. The situation is different for synthetic languages. Let's look at these examples. In Italian, we say piove. In Spanish, it's llueve. In Ukrainian, it's doshchit. Literally, what we are saying here is rain or is raining. No subject is used. We don't need to say that the rain is raining. These languages allow you to omit the subject, but it's impossible in English. The SVO must always have its subject. That's why when we don't have an explicit subject, we use a dummy one. We need to put something in that place in the sentence where the subject belongs for it to function as a subject. Please note that when you have a sentence like there are some books, there doesn't speak about a place. It's an empty subject. So if you need to translate such a sentence into your language, you just omit it. In your language, one word might be enough. Here can be used in a similar way. Here are some fresh newspapers. Here is the book you've been searching for. The subjects of the sentences actually are some fresh newspapers and the book. And here is an expletive adverb. As here is an antonym to there, we can use it when the objects we are speaking about are somewhere near. Let's compare. There is a good book on this topic. Here is the book you've been searching for. In the first case, no one knows where exactly. There doesn't mean anything in particular, but still retains the idea of being at some distance, figurative or literal, from the speaker. In the second sentence, here too retains the idea of its adverbial meaning of being close, figuratively or literally, to the speaker. Here, though usually gives us some information, it's actually an adverb that shows where something is. There, on the other hand, is absolutely empty. That's why sometimes we have such strange sentences as our first example in this lesson. There are some books over there. You actually say it 2 times because only the second there speaks about the place. Let's talk about other syntactic expletives. One of the most common empty subjects that you see in English is it. Of course, we know that the pronoun it can be used as a subject of a sentence when it represents a living being or a thing. For example, I saw something on the porch. It was moving. It here is the pronoun that replaces our object from the previous sentence, something. The house was barely visible from the road. It was surrounded by tall trees. The pronoun it replaces the noun of the previous sentence, that is, the house. But sometimes the pronoun it doesn't represent anybody and anything and performs purely grammatical function. In this case, it works as a syntactic expletive, another placeholder for the subject. In this role, it can be used to denote natural phenomena, time, and distance. Consider these examples. It is 5 o'clock now. It is raining. It was hot outside. It was snowing yesterday. Will it be sunny tomorrow? We call it in such sentences the indefinite nominative of an impersonal pronoun, or empty it. As you see from the examples on the screen, it is often used to speak about weather, and that's why sometimes it's called weather it. Let's take a closer look at these examples though. It is 5 o'clock. The empty subject it actually replaces here the word time. What we mean is that the time is 5 o'clock, but we don't say it like that. We don't say the time is 5 o'clock. We say it is 5 o'clock. We cannot drop the subject altogether. We need to put something there, and we choose the empty it. It is raining means the rain is raining, or the weather is raining. It was hot outside. The temperature was hot outside. It is clear for us that the meaningful subject here is the temperature. The temperature is hot. It was snowing yesterday. The weather was snowing, yeah? Or the snow was snowing. Will it be sunny? It replaces the word weather again. Will the weather be sunny? As it is not an adverb, unlike in our previous sentences, the SVO word order is not violated. It is a pronoun in the sentences that performs a function of the subject, as both nouns and pronouns can be real subjects. Thus, these sentences still follow the subject, verb, object, word order. Let's look at some more examples with empty it. It was a bear. It seems that she loves him. It was said that the majority would never support him. It is my pleasure to be present today. It is brown sugar that is needed for this cake. It is because of its exquisite humor that this book is loved by many. Pay attention to this sentence. It is my pleasure to be present here today. It introduces the real subject to be present here today. According to some grammarians, though, it is the true subject, and the rest of the sentence, to be present here today, is the predicate. So that greatly depends on what theory you stick to. The last 2 sentences contain what we call the emphatic it. They are called cleft sentences, and their function in the language is to highlight this or that part of the sentence, to put a semantic stress to a particular part of the sentence. We will discuss cleft sentences in a separate lesson for sure, as it's one of the most common emphatic means in the language. Without getting into detailed grammar analysis of the sentences, let's stress the main point here. It, in all of these sentences, is a dummy subject, empty in its meaning. It is there only to satisfy the SVO. Another untypical word order we may have when we omit the verb to be. Yes, it sometimes happens in English, believe it or not. The omission of a form of to be is called null copula or zero copula. This phenomenon is widespread in many synthetic languages. The element that may be omitted is not always a verb. For example, in Italian, it may be a personal pronoun. We say sono stanca, literally am tired. We don't necessarily need io because sono, the verb, shows us who the doer of the action is, what person and number it is. The same situation we have in Greek. If we want to say I am tired, we can omit I, saying ime kourasmenos. You don't need to say eho, I, because ime shows who the doer of the action is. Okay, but these are pronouns. What about verbs? In some languages we can omit verbs. For instance, in Ukrainian, in Belarusian, and in Russian. For example, in Ukrainian, we can omit the verb to be in the present tense. We say він мій друг. We don't necessarily need the verb є. In English, the sentence literally means he, my friend. And in English, without the verb to be, the sentence makes no sense. In English, an SVO language, the verb to be is a must. Still, there are structures where it is occasionally or always omitted. Let's look at them. The more the better. The full sentence would be the more it is, the better it is. Or enough already. The full sentence, it is enough already. You hungry? The full question is, are you hungry? Let's look at some cases when that can happen. We can have the omission of the verb to be or null copula when we have paired comparative adjectives, like in the more the better. Look at these two sentences. The more you speak, the better your language is. In this sentence, you cannot drop is, because the sentence will be ruined. But let me show you a different example. The higher the floor is, the higher the price of the apartment is. As it is the same verb in both cases, in this paired comparatives, we can drop the verb to be. So you can just say, the higher the floor, the higher the price of the apartment. And this sentence actually sounds better. Instead of repeating the verb is 2 times, you drop it altogether. We can also omit the verb to be after some conjunctions. For example, when we connect two parts of the sentences where the verb to be is used in a similar way. For example, the work was difficult, but it was not boring. You can say the work was difficult, but not boring. Was is omitted here because it repeats another was that we had in the previous clause. Moreover, its subject, it, represents the same thing as the subject of the previous was in the previous clause. We can often see this omission after but and although. Let's look at one more example with although this time. Although a bit old-fashioned, this phone works flawlessly. Be can also be omitted before object complements. A common case is after the verb consider. This painting is considered to be one of his best, or you can simply say this painting is considered one of his best. We considered Alex to be the only student in the group who could become a teacher. Or we simply considered Alex the only student in the group who could become a teacher. Other verbs that at least sometimes allow this omission might be judge, declare, believe, appoint, find, and think, when they express somebody's opinions or beliefs. We can drop the verb be after whatever the. For example, you may try on any dress you like, whatever the price is. Or you may try on any dress you like, whatever the price. I'm sure you noticed that the verb to be and articles are usually omitted in headlines and titles, just to make them more concise. This was the last lesson of the series dedicated to word order in English. I tried to make this series as comprehensive as I could, but let's be honest, we're all humans and we forget something. So I'm sure there are things that I forgot to tell you about. If you have something on your mind, please write it down in the comment section down below. You can ask me any questions about the English language. Subscribe to this channel and see you in the next lesson.